just to report that I'm there.
Okay. Good to have you here.
So we're also live on Facebook.
Mm. Good afternoon, all. I wish to welcome you here. My name is Lilian Waihwene from Global Peace Foundation, and we're starting off our call for today, this Zoom meeting. It's our 5th edition of Transforming Education series, and our theme today is determining the readiness of learning institutions for the reopening and collaborative efforts by the stakeholders in the education system. So what I'll do now, I'll just give a few ground rules and guidelines for our participants. Maybe to mention the fact that we will all be muted so that we can avoid distractions, but all the same, we can be able to interact. At the bottom of your screen there's a chat section. On that section, you can be able to write your questions, you can be able to share any resources there, and you can be able to interact and network on that section there. To our valuable panelists today, we have 9 panelists today. We will give each panelist like 5 minutes to note just like 3 main key points, and so that we can create enough time for discussion. We have questions from our participants that we'll be able to discuss on that session, and any other question that will be collected after that. So as I welcome you, I would request all of us to participate. I'm going to run a poll right now, and I request all our participants here to be able to participate on the same. So we have our poll running, and we run it for 10 more seconds. We request that you participate. We have a few seconds to go, like 3 seconds before I can end the poll, then we can all see. So the question here is what area requires intensive preparation as schools reopen? And we see most of us believe that social distancing and hygiene is what requires most of the preparation, and psychological support for parents and students, and then again financial preparations on the part of the parents. Okay, thank you so much for your view there. I will stop sharing this poll, and I will run one more poll before we can start off our Zoom meeting today. Kindly take your few seconds to participate on this poll too. We are asking if you can tell us why you joined this session today. Do you want to network to get deeper understanding of concepts, working with solutions and models? We're running the poll for a few more seconds, like 5 seconds, then we can end the poll. Kindly participate. Thank you. So again, here are the results you can see. Here are the results that we are having. And we want to, most of us are here to get working solutions and models. This is great. Thank you so much. I will invite our moderator for the day, and that is Dr. Tony Devine, to take over this session.
So good afternoon, everybody. It's a great honor and pleasure to moderate such a distinguished panel. Today, we have a very, very important topic, as Kenya is in the process of conducting next week a staged reopening of schools. So we're going to be discussing today with our panel, which is a very, very diverse panel, on the readiness of learning institutions for the reopening of schools and collaborative efforts by different stakeholder groups in the education ecosystem. And we really put together a very diverse panel representing students. We're really delighted to have students on this panel today. We'll also have the private schools, secondary schools represented. In addition, tertiary education, we're going to have parents represented, mental health and hygiene, and also entrepreneurship and business. So a very eclectic group of experts will be on this call here today. So each panelist will have 5 minutes to communicate 3 key points on our topic today. And then we'll open it up. We'll invite after that, we'll invite panelists to ask and have inquiry questions of one another, right? Because there's so many different sectors and stakeholder groups represented. And we will then also ask the panelists questions that you submitted during the registration process. So before we get into it, I just want to welcome all of the participants joining our call today. We're also streaming live on Facebook as well. So let me start then by introducing our first speaker. By the way, before I do that, we will be putting the bios of the speakers in the chat. So I will not go through the entire bio for the sake of time. I will just introduce the main headline of each person. So very delighted to have as our first speaker representing the students. So Albert Maloba, he's the president of my University Students Governing Council and chairperson of Universities President's Council of Kenya. So Albert, welcome to our call here, and you're all up now.
Okay, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for welcoming me, Mr. Tony Divine, and just to say hello to all members who are attending our meeting this afternoon. So my name is Albert Maloba, the president of Mayo University and also the chairperson of University's President's Council. To narrow down to our discussion today is that we have seen an entire generation since Corona started, education being interrupted in the whole world. And we've seen almost to 91% of the world's students in more than 194 countries were put out of school just to make sure that coronavirus ends and so they get back to schools. So I'll speak entirely on behalf of the university students who have been largely affected, especially here in our country, Kenya. And being the position of leadership, I'll touch on 3 key areas. One is that our students have not been able to learn because of maybe a lack of resources, which you have seen in other countries. Students have continued learning through online teaching that has been ongoing. To almost a bigger percentage, we have entirely seen zero participation of online teaching in our universities in Kenya. Reasons is because people don't have resources. And as a president and even the chairperson of University's President's Council, we have requested the government so many times that they should put this into their plans. If we shall ever have any pandemic ahead of us, to at least buy laptops for university students, which is possible because this is a third world country. We cannot assume that everybody is able to buy resources so that he or she can be able to learn. Another thing that has also affected the students is the stop of Higher Education Loans Board. There is something in our country called Higher Education Loans Board, for those who are not familiar with our country. That is a loan that is given to university students or government-sponsored students. That money helps them to run a few of their activities. And that's why it goes one-on-one with the issue of resources. Even if the student wanted to buy a laptop, might not have been able, and yet this loan was also stopped to be given by the Higher Education Loans Board, which is something that is so unfortunate. But again, we have also put a proposal in the Ministry of Education to help furnish it if they can partner with the government to get to secure some money to ensure that during this process, even as we move to the blended learning in other universities, and which I've seen other universities have been, even mine, we see that the postgraduates and other schools have been going on with their online studies, but because of the facilitation of finances, which comes as a loan, it has been a challenge. And then thirdly, is that the pandemic is bound to rise again. And so one of the key areas that we've been looking at as a council is that we want to see the government putting together all the plans in case we have any other pandemic. And this is through consultations to directly have a contact with student leaders, because they have the direct link to the students. They know the challenges that they are facing on day to day. And so by them having that direct channel to the students, I think when we shall have this kind of pandemic happening again, we shall be ready to go. So the issues are enormous. Having even communicated on some issues of rents, as even we resume, we have seen that the government is in plans for us to resume. We are ready to resume learning. And we have seen in other East African countries, such as Tanzania, the students have been going on well with their studies. But again, even as we look on the resumption, then we have a challenge that all the stakeholders that are involved, just as we are here on board with many people representing the interests of students who are in one way children to families, and we are all as a country responsible to each other. So the ministry still needs to do much to ensure that in case we have a pandemic, education will not be stopped and the students are going to continue their education without being interrupted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for these very, very important comments, Albert. You mentioned some very, very key points here. I was actually surprised to hear, right, that there is little online learning going on. Can you just comment on that for real quick? Just elaborate on that maybe for 20 seconds. What did you mean by that? There's little online learning.
For the online teaching, for the online learning is that I think as a country, there has been a delay in process of having online learning also as one way of learning. And people have been used for physical learning too much until they forgot other avenues where they can still meet and continue having their learning processes. So in this manner, I mean that a fair share of the universities had not taken all their students to online learning or online teaching. And so it has been a challenge which needs to be addressed with a lot of attention in the shortest time possible. In case we have any other pandemic, then we shall continue coming back here, having the same discussions without having found the solutions. And so that's why, with other many reasons, we have wrote a lot of recommendations that I would like to share with you, but I think because of the short time that I have to present on my key points, I will stop at that.
Thank you very much, Albert, and thanks for elaborating on that. So I'd like to go again. We'll stay in the student domain. Delighted to have as our second speaker, Ian Emmanuel Oparanya. He's an economics and finance student from the University of Bristol. So would like to hear the perspective of the students in the diaspora. So Ian, welcome.
First, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of this summit. My name is Ian Oparanya, and I'm an MSc student at the University of Bristol. I'll speak on behalf of the international students. Since COVID-19 started, international students have experienced a lot of challenges. Top of the list is that internship opportunities have been harder to get, while others have been canceled, postponed, or moved online. Students that are graduating in 2020 have also worried about getting jobs because the economy is still volatile and employers are finding it hard to pay workers. International students have, however, taken this positively and tried to engage in volunteering opportunities, especially in the health sector, because of the demand that is in the health sector currently. Secondly, financial constraint has also been a major issue. A large number of international students depend financially on part-time jobs. However, due to the pandemic, most of them lost their job. Because of this, students are not able to pay accommodation and even cater for their living expenses. In addition, on May 4th, the UK government announced that tuition fees will be paid in full. Some parents that were seriously affected by COVID-19 financially are unwilling or unable to raise funds to cater for the expensive overseas education. This has really affected the mental health of international students. To add on that, with most colleges and universities teaching online due to the virus, many international students have found this mode of learning more challenging. This is because most of them were used to interacting with lecturers face-to-face, which brought more human fulfillment for social interaction. In addition, some of them that are back home do not have reliable internet access. Studying from home has also affected the productivity and routine of some students. Despite these challenges, lecturers in UK universities have endeavored to ensure everything is easily accessible online. For example, in the University of Bristol was quick to respond by making library resources easily accessible online. The lecturers have also been of great support by responding swiftly to emails pertaining to queries, clarifications, and direction. An admirable amount of UK universities has also launched a COVID-19 hardship fund to help international students with unforeseen financial challenges. This fund is being supported by donations from alumni and friends from the universities. Since the pandemic has adversely affected the mental health of international students, UK universities have also come up with ways of providing free online counseling services through phone calls or video calls. Lastly, something that I believe my country, Kenya, can learn from is the manner in which UK universities have made sure all final year students graduate on time while ensuring they have the right mind frame to take the corporate world. Nearly 70% of universities in the UK have implemented the no detriment policy, where students that are affected by the pandemic will have their degrees frozen, meaning that they can only improve on it, but cannot fall below the current level. In addition, the universities have also ensured that every student progresses to the next level despite the pandemic. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian. I think that was a very helpful perspective, from the UK and the University of Bristol. I think we can learn a lot from other countries here, and adapt best practices. So other countries have opened up their schools as well, and that's very good information that you provided here today. So we're going to continue here with our third speaker, and a very good friend of mine, Matteo. I've met you several times already, and you've been on many of our calls in this series this year. So I really want to thank you for all of your investment here. So Matteo Kazanga is the chairperson of the Kenya Private Schools Association. And we'd love to hear from you what's going on with the private schools in terms of readiness of opening up now and also in the future.
Thank you very much, Tony. For us in the private schools, we've been, of course, in the limelight as the one sector that has been most affected by the closure. We've had teachers, of course, and staff go unpaid for months and months on end. So the reopening comes as a small ray of light at the end of a very, very dark tunnel. And surprisingly, despite all the challenges, we are surprisingly the readiest to reopen. We are the most prepared. We just happen to be lucky because we have fewer students per class, and therefore and most schools happen to be smaller by the very nature of where they are and how they're set up. So as far as readiness for reopening is concerned, there's quite a lot of enthusiasm on that end. Teachers are looking forward to getting back to work, and staff are getting forward to work because they've literally lost all their livelihoods in the last 6 months. The current effort to reopen the education sector approaches the reopening on a phased strategy. This gives the Ministry of Health perhaps time to watch how the general population and the pandemic will behave sort of once we reopen. The idea is to rescue the academic year. Kenya was standing out as the only country on the Great North Road from Cape Town to Cairo that had still not opened the education sector. And given that the pandemic seems to be behaving roughly the same way north of South Africa all the way to Egypt, we really did not have any reason not to reopen education. So for us as the main stakeholders in education, and I'm sure Mr. Mayo and Mr. Ndimuli will mention this, rescuing the academic year so that students are not forced to repeat an academic year was the priority here. And the other issue is balancing out the scales between those who managed to access online learning and the majority who did not manage to access any learning at all. So the calendar that has been rolled out, I'm sure all of you have had a look at it, is sort of a 4-term strategy to get back to normal by the end of 2022. The big question here is how ready we are as an education sector, given that the 3 things that are the buzzwords for managing COVID in education were masking, hygiene, and social distancing. How ready are we? For us in education, with the collaboration of the Ministry of Health, we have 2 irreducible minimums. We will not open if those 2 minimums are not met: mandatory masking and hygiene, which is either sanitizer or water availability for hand washing and soaps. These 2 will be met and are being met. Inspections have been done and most schools are absolutely ready to reopen. And because now the reopening is phased, we will actually have we will have social distancing from Monday, because in primary, only 2 lots are coming in secondary 1 lot is coming. For us in the private schools, again, we are faced with the other challenge that private education is not free, even at its lowest cost. And therefore, we have to work very closely with parents to ensure that all parents are accommodated, despite the fact that, parents feel that the notice to reopen is short. We have been planning to reopen schools. We're going to reopen eventually. But the main thing here is that the economy in Kenya has been battered by the pandemic, and that everybody is suffering right now financially. So the Kenya Private Schools Association will continue to work and urge schools to collaborate with parents to make sure that fee repayments are negotiated and worked out so that all parents can get their children back to school. Our one concern as we go forward is education technology. We have certainly seen the advantages that the schools that manage to go online have given their children. We have seen the value of education technology on the impact to access to information, access to knowledge, even the different ways, the way some schools were able to continue teaching online and therefore minimize learning losses. This is going to be a big concern, and this is going to be the one thing that going forward, we are all going to try and ring fence and protect and work out how those gains do not get eroded again as we kick back into the norm. The current curriculum is very information heavy. Therefore, it's very easy to teach on a blackboard and just teach very simply without using technology. Yet we have seen the gains of technology as the pandemic forced a rethink on how learning can take place. So we're trying to work out how to ring fence some of the gains
Moseo, 1 minute.
made. Thank you. How the gains that we have made in EdTech will continue to leverage and can be spread, so that we can now say that Kenya is rolling out the digital learning program, especially in the private sector, where things tend to be funded from the parent side. We're looking forward to benefiting from the lower costs that have emerged during the pandemic for everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matteo. These were important points you mentioned. In particular, I'm encouraged, by your efforts to engage with parents. I think this is such a great opportunity, for schools and parents to unite in a way that never happened before, right? Not just for the payment of fees, but actually to support the social emotional well-being of students, and also to support their learning. So I think this is such an important group, parents. And in fact, students are actually being homeschooled, all over the world, in Kenya and everywhere else. So we really have to work with the parents. So really important point here. I mean, just the point you mentioned, we could do 5 webinars on those alone. The challenges are so amazing, right? But I think pulling great people together, we can deal with these. We can solve these challenges. So delighted now to go to another good friend of mine. We met in Korea last year. I've met him in Kenya many times, Mr. Indamuli Kahi. He's the chairman of Kenya Secondary School Heads Association. So Mr. Indamuli, we're looking forward to hearing about the readiness of public schools and secondary schools in Kenya for the reopening. Welcome.
Thank you, Tony. So during internet connectivity issues. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say that as public schools, we are struggling to get ready, despite the short time we have been given. But we've been 6 months, and we've been participating in various discussions. Maybe very quickly, I would say, as a member of the Education COVID-19 Response Committee, we had several, and it would be good for that to arrive at this decision. A lot of factors were looked at, particularly with the advice of the Ministry of Health. And then, in addition to that, we were trying to look how we can salvage the year so that students are not forced to repeat. I hope I'm being heard, Tony.
I can hear you fine. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. So we didn't want the students to repeat again, as had earlier been announced. Secondly, we wanted to ensure that we are able to harmonize the years of starting school from January in the shortest time possible, so that we get with our colleagues so those were some of the considerations that were put. In public schools, the major challenge has been financing of schools, so that we can put in place what is needed to ensure safe reopening of the schools. And as at 1 hour ago, schools had not received any funds. But in a short while ago, I received a call that funds should be credited to the time from now. So good news to assist schools prepare. Now, the biggest issue had been the social distancing, given that before pandemic, we were already grappling with the overcrowded classes, which was a very big challenge, and we were also looking at the short. So with social distancing coming in again, this compounds the problem. With the first reopening, where we are only starting with a candidate class to give them the opportunity to finish and sit their exams, the challenge of social distancing can be mitigated, at least with the fewer number of students in our schools, that we will be able to manage. But the challenge is the school heads association. We've been appealing to government to ensure that schools have water by way of providing tanks where county governments can support through the many water bowsers that they have to fill these tanks, and then the students, the teachers, and other stakeholders of the school can practice hand washing regularly. Because as Madam Modeo did say, that we've said we can't overlook, that is continuous wearing of masks and regular hand washing. And in areas where we can't get, then it is sanitizing all the time. The issue of masks has also been a challenge. The question we have been asking, who will provide the masks? Is it the government or the parents? And in our last discussion, it appeared this ball is being thrown to the parents. And when discussing with the chairman of the parents, I think they are making a communication to all parents so that each child is given through the schools to masks. I think we are following at the moment. But there are things that as a nation, we need to look at. What lessons have we learned, Tony, here? Number one, we have to rethink about our class, because the class sizes have been very large, to an extent that when we have a shock like this one, it becomes very difficult to manage this class. When we divide the classes into smaller numbers, you need an extra number of teachers, which cannot be provided in the near future. Number two, we have to rethink our assessment so that we revamp it in a way that we are able, thank you, we are able to follow the child's performance for a good time, not just looking at a snapshot of what they can perform. Can we create a portfolio that can, so we wouldn't be having this problem if we were able to get this data to enable us as the children. Then the use of technology. It was very clear, they said schools that had good infrastructure managed to get their students to continue learning. This we need to invest in, but all schools in our nation are able to manage such program. Another area that we need to look at is, as I said earlier, we must imagine funding of our schools. Allocated to assist schools invest in technology. The way funding is done today, no funds are allocated to manage the issue of ICT integration in schools. This is left for schools to discuss with their parents. I know at the moment people will be asking, were parents consulted to set the day of reunion? I want to mention in our committee of COVID response committee, parents were represented throughout the meetings with the national Chairperson, who is also in this forum, will confirm this, so that we had a concurrence as a stakeholder on when we needed to start. And I said there were factors that we were able to look at. So thank you very much. I'm sure we'll have another time to share more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Indamuli. You mentioned some really critical issues here. In particular, you know, the goal not to have students repeat a year. That would be a motivational killer in many ways, right? So students are already struggling with motivation, and there's many resource issues, right, that the schools are dealing with. You know, definitely the whole area of technology, ICT, really needs to get ramped up, I feel. And I think this is where, you know, this ecosystem approach that we're talking about on this call is important, where we work with technology companies, the mobile companies and so on. I think it's everybody's business now, because as Matteo mentioned earlier on, you know, the economy is very badly affected by this. So, you know, everyone has to get on board on the education bandwagon and help it out, in my view. Okay, so thank you very much for those inputs. Let's go to tertiary education next. And I'm delighted to have Professor Laban Airiro. He's the Vice Chancellor of Daystar University in Kenya. So we'll be very interested to hear what's going on with the universities and how they're handling the whole reopening issue. Professor Laban, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a pleasure. And thank you for the very valuable inputs from the speakers who came before me. Daystar is a private university. We have an enrollment of about 5,000 students. And from the time COVID was declared and schools and tertiary institutions were closed, we migrated to the online platform, which was already existing, a robust platform. So learning was not disrupted, and we managed to complete the semester. We had exams. We came in for the May classes, the blocks, and now we're into September, and learning is going on. Right now, we have about 4,000 students registered on the e-learning platform. So perhaps I can say the same for most private universities in Kenya, at least the top private universities. Learning has gone on. I really, when we were told to prepare for evaluation, we did all the protocols required. So we have the temperature guns, we have the TV screens, and we have sanitizers and areas of washing, which I will not want to go into. But I would like to handle a few salient features from what my colleagues have talked about. First of all, we must accept that these social isolation measures will disrupt school-based education for several months. Ndimuli Kai has said, yes, we are saving 1 year so that the students don't repeat, but you know, there's a whole cohort of other students behind who I can almost predict that they're going to lose out on 1 year of schooling. And that should be a major concern for the country and the government particularly. They have also mentioned modalities, alternative modalities of learning. I think if you take a case where we have about 26,000 public primary schools in the Republic of Kenya, and a recent survey showed that only about 500 of those public primary schools engaged in any form of learning, you can see that learning literally stopped in our public primary schools. I cannot talk for secondary schools. And so what does this mean for us as a country? It means we are amplifying the gaps in opportunity across the whole country. I think that is the tragedy of COVID-19. And these are the vulnerable groups. So those of us who are a little privileged in society to get into private schools, primary, secondary, university, we are a minority. And the majority of Kenyans, Kenyan children, really, the gap is going to get bigger as we go on. And I think it is very important for the government now, as Ndimuli mentioned, to allocate resources to try and bridge this gap, because it is going to be a major social point of social departure in our country. I also want to mention that the restrictions on mobility created by social distance have diminished economic supply and demand That's obvious. And has severely impacted businesses and jobs. Now, what does that mean? It means that a sector like education is on the ground. In fact, I was reading an article and somebody said that, I don't know how he put it, but he said that our pulse rate in education is actually very, very, very low. In fact, it is almost entering the intensive care unit, the pulse rate in education. If you imagine a university like Mayo University, where I just came before I came to Daystar, if they're struggling with e-learning, and that's the second largest public university in the country, the oldest, second oldest public university, you can imagine what's happening in the other, almost 33 other public universities and the impact on our country. Finally, it's important for us to realize that really COVID-19 foremost, this COVID-19 foremost is a public health issue. It's a public health issue. So during the closure of schools, I expected that we would be working on public health measures. Yes, whether it is hygiene, whether it is sanitation, it's a public health issue. And the ultimate is, of course, is a vaccine. When we get the vaccine, we shall say yes. But before that, we are simply slowing down the conditions. So the point is that the Ministry of Health must be at the center of this. It's not a matter of the Ministry of Education, because this is really their issue. And Kahi mentioned this briefly, but and also Mudeu Kasanga. I don't know, as we open, has the ministry thought about reprioritizing the curriculum? Are we going to have exams? Yes, are we going to have the same exams for all Kenyans? What are we doing about the reality and the mechanisms of delivery, and how we are going to examine this class 8 and Form 4 students? Are we still going to give them those exams where there is regurgitation of matters learned? Or are we going to use psychometric tests to test their level of intelligence, given the circumstances we are in? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Leban. You're bringing up some really key issues here right at the end. Yeah, I do believe that, Kenya and other countries too will have to make adjustments to the curriculum, and also adjustments have to be made to assessment as well correspondingly. And also, the whole issue of assessment needs to be rethought from, the current summative assessment where everything is decided by one big final exam, to a more formative type of assessment. And I'm really glad you mentioned about the measuring of skills. Employers are looking for people with skills, right, and competencies, rather than how much content they consumed. So this whole area needs a very important look. We really have to think a lot and work hard, right, to move things, I think, in a better way. I do think there's a silver lining here with this issue. I think we need to identify the good opportunities here while we manage the challenges as well. So we'll continue on the tertiary side as well next. So delighted now to have Professor Annie Nangula. She's the principal of Bomet University College. So Annie, it's all yours. We're looking forward to hearing your perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm glad to speak after Laban, Professor Iro. Nice to see you, and that we are also on the same platform. But let me first of all thank the team that I just been speaking, the colleagues speaking on the same plus students. I think what I'm going to say is just mainly to fill in what is happening. I should say that Bomet, first of all, is in the South Rift. It's a constituency college of Mayo University. But I'd like to say that what Professor said, that if big universities are suffering, I think smaller universities that are starting young, is like we're also trying to get it right, in the sense that maybe we are benefiting from the good practices, including what Oparanya said. So first, I would like to say that for Bomet, when the closure was coming up, we were just doing 3 weeks towards examination. So we were not so badly off as a young institution. And what we have already done is that we had already embraced blended learning. And being also young and small, we have also benefited from government, which we have to thank them, particularly from the ICT ministry. I would say that we have one of the best internets, but somebody can think we are young. We can host about 30,000 students or staff at the same time. So we have embraced blended learning, and we were able, as Professor Laban also mentioned, like to do even remedials and assist some of the students that we had. We are reopening with the in phases, as the other colleagues had already mentioned. Kasanga mentioned that. We are starting with the 4th years who actually reported yesterday, and we are working on it so that they can do examinations. The only thing I would like to emphasize is the issue of health, which has also been alluded to, that the emphasis should be not just public health, but the emphasis should also be on behavior change, in the sense that we also need to have a behavior change and make the issues of sanitation be part of our learning. It is the Kenya government has already stipulated over the years that the health matters should be part of curricula. But I think we have not been taking this very, very serious in the sense that people put it in the curriculum, but it's just like a topic taught like any other. But the behavior change, the public health, the health issues have to be part of curricula. I would say that all this has to come from primary school all the way, or elementary school all the way to tertiary institutions. And if we put it as an everyday activity being taught and practiced, with stringent measures, then we will make our children, whether young or old, to be responsible on how to sustain health matters. Personally, I feel so strongly that COVID has had an opportunity even to teach the public on how sanitation is a major issue. And this is something that we need to bring up in terms of the curricula and what we are talking about so for sustainability. I would like also to say that we need to redefine the concept of space, particularly in our curricula. Whether if we look at the pedagogy or didactics, the strategies of learning, we need now to think of curricula and develop it in such a way that we are redefining space, both virtual and physical space. And this is what, like in Bomet, we are already doing, and we need to embrace. But personally, I feel so strongly that when we talk about online learning, we should embrace blended learning. It is more sustainable in the sense that, do we have face-to-face at what time? Do we have blended at what time? Even in the same institution, we should be doing blended learning. And the whole issue of technological innovations, I would like to mention very strongly that the issue of energy has to be addressed. Today in the morning, we had shortage power outages in Bomet. And it is so hard if we do not have a sustainable source of energy, whether it's electric, whether it's renewable energy. And this is where we also want to say that the sustainability of energy has to be there. Otherwise, this online or blended learning or embracing technology will only, as said earlier by my other colleagues, will only benefit very few people. The issue of policy, this country, we have a lot of policies in place, and Kai can say this in the education sector. We have tons and tons of policies. Some of them we are even repeating. Maybe what we should be doing now is that we should be mining what is there and implement rather than putting a lot of resources to developing other policies, yet we have these policies and even the guidelines we have now. If you look at it, we must implement them. Otherwise, we'll be also putting resources to develop what we already have. My last comment is that we have also to rethink about financing university education. Even what the government is giving for public institutions, I'm telling you, we cannot sustain the same. We are not able, as CEOs of universities, to sustain the same. Maybe we need to embrace the public partnership at a very strong level. We also need to bring in even endowment funds. We need to look at humanitarian groups or people come up. Alumni need to come in and have some alumni kitties in the institution so that they can help. Otherwise, if we leave for government alone, the government alone also is overburdened. We cannot manage to sustain the education sector. I think I'll just come in at another stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Annie. You're bringing up a key point here also at the end about, that we really do need an ecosystem approach here, right, to education. The government-only approach is limited, especially in this new environment that we're in. And also, you talked about space. So one of the things we learned during this pandemic is that learning is not a place, it's actually an activity. It can happen anywhere. So yeah, we have to be really entrepreneurial and get inputs from industry, the private sector, and other stakeholder groups to help with inputs, right, and how we can go forward. So now we will go to another stakeholder group. We will get the perspective of parents. I really have to have a call out to parents here on our call. Parents have took on a huge burden task this year in Kenya and around the world, where they had to struggle with work, and also they had to actually educate their children, right? They were virtually homeschooling all around. So delighted now to have Nicholas Mayo. He's National Chairman of the National Parents Association in Kenya. We are looking forward to hearing your perspective here, Nicholas.
Thank you, Tony, for having me. Are you hearing me?
Tony? We can hear you very well.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, we've been with our children for the last 7 months. And when the first announcement was made that we should lose the whole year and reopen in 2021, we were through hell because our children are not happy. They actually didn't want to lose or to repeat a class, as said by Kasanga and my colleague Dimuli. So my view as a National Parents Association is that the National Parents Association representing parents in public schools in the country has a stake in the welfare of learners. As the government has been keen to a structured and carefully thought out process of resumption and reopening of learners' institutions, as Parent Association, we are very much keen on ensuring that there is sufficient consideration to promote and safeguard every child's rights to education, health, and safety, as set out in the Convention on the Rights of a Child. That is Article 53(2) of Kenya Constitution 2010, stipulates that a child's best interests are of paramount importance in every matter concerning a child. Our key concerns raised by the parents on reopening. One is that the government and other stakeholders must intensively and precisely engage communities in reopening the school institutions. Number two, there was poor strategy of targeting resources to where they are needed most. Three, getting children back to school, considering that some of them may have fallen victims of cultural, social, and economic issues like marriage. Four, the school environment have not been sufficiently made safe as per the IPC protocols. The last one, the concerns raised by our parents is that no communication has been met on recovering learning loss and building back better. So, Tony, as part of the association, we are keen to taking our children back to school as announced by the CS. And we want the following to be availed or made possible. To encourage and support the enrollment of all our students and policymakers, we should combine community participation and large-scale direct communication campaigns to parents and consider increasing attendance options to accommodate all children, including those with high risk of dropping out. And we should also provide financial or in-kind support, such as school feeding, to help families overcome the increased cost of attending school. Otherwise, what it has been said by my colleagues, Kasanga and Dimuli, I share. Only that we want, when schools reopen, children should have a reusable mask, because while they were at home for the last 7 months, we've been buying masks that are disposable, and it has been expensive for us, because every time a child goes out to meet friends or to go out to fetch some food in the market, we always buy these masks for them. And the masks we've been buying are the masks that are disposable, and it has been very expensive for our parents. So we want our children, when they go back to school, they should be provided with reusable masks. And from the government side, they have said they will not allow, they don't have the funds as promised before. So I've mobilized our members, and they have agreed that the government should look for us a suitable company that provides reusable masks at a reasonable price, so that they are failing school, and the only work the parents will do is just pay the money in school, and their children will get 2 masks each. 2, supply of adequate clean water.
Mr. Mayo.
Yes. Temperature monitoring, referral systems for provision of mental health and psychosocial support for our children, continued learning and review of schools' daily routine, and finally, procedures of handling suspected COVID-19 cases, because we believe anything can happen when our children are in school. And we are saying that we are supporting the reopening of school. I'm also urged my members, been going through to all the media houses, told them that in fact, saving the year will be cheaper for us, because we had already paid first term fees. We'll only pay the second term and third term. Otherwise, I thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Nicholas. You're highlighting important points from the viewpoint of parents about masks, reusable masks, and so on. I know when this whole pandemic hit the USA here, my wife has a sewing machine, so she went ahead and started making masks, right? So, I think we can be entrepreneurial here, even in the homes, to do what we can to help the situation out. You brought up another important issue. I hope we can get to it in the Q&A, and that is the challenge of dropout, right? If students are not motivated, there's a real risk of dropout, or they lose interest in learning. And we have to figure out how to keep students well motivated, and also to keep them inspired to continue learning all the time. Okay, we're going to go to, so thanks, Nicholas, for those inputs. Let's get another angle here from the mental health and hygiene perspective. This issue has come up a lot on the call, so I think we'll all be very keen, ears open, to listen from Phyllis Wanga. Phyllis is the founder and CEO of Akali organization, who this organization deals with mental health and hygiene. Okay, Phyllis, we're looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us here today.
Thank you very much, Tony, for having me here. So I'm going to be having some screen sharing. Thank you, Budoi. So first of all, something that we really need to put in place is understanding that mental health is very important to every human being, and every human being deserves good mental health, deserves a healthy mind. So starting off, move on to the next slide, Budoi. So first we'll have, the question is, are we ready for this? And now the question I'm posing to each one of us today is, are we ready to have a mind shift? Because the first thing to change is changing our mindset. We cannot live the same way we used to live before Corona. We have to change the way we do things. So many things have happened. We have had so many disruptions and all that. How are we flexing ourselves to fit in this new kind of way? Move on to the next slide. So this is just a slide that talks about why paradigm is really important, the way we see things, the way we understand and interpret the world right now. The things that happened before Corona we cannot really live our lives the same way. And with that, we are supposed to have this kind of change of things are not the same. So what can we do? What solutions can we come up with? And are we bringing everyone on board? The second point is on mental health. We really need to understand that everyone has been affected. As you can see the art piece there, we have so many, not only the students, but also the parents, teachers, everybody. Many of us are in this state. We feel like we've lost a whole year. We feel like our dreams have been shattered. We wanted to go to another school maybe. We feel like we don't even know what is going to happen next. So mental health is supposed to be made a priority in school. We've had life skills classes in our programs, but when you actually look deep into it, many of us don't really take it seriously. We put in other subjects replacing life skills. So we also need to consider synergy. Synergy is all about having everyone on board, teamwork, understanding that depression has really doubled up at this moment. Suicidal cases are really at a high rate. We've had students, teachers, our parents, even dying by suicide, which is really sad. So how can we bring everyone on board? The government, the media, the schools, the churches, everyone who is on the ground. How can we work together to ensure that our mental state is at the right position to move forward as we are reopening schools? Something that I really need to put across is mental health programs should be in schools. Those life skills classes need to be taken seriously. Let's not assume that we'll just go back and start learning. Our students have to be on the right mindset, and our teachers too, and our parents too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Phyllis. You're bringing up a point here about mental health, life skills, right? And you also suggested a solution too, right? That we do need that collaborative approach. Engaging the media. We have Standard Media Group on the call here today. Schools. I'm really glad you mentioned churches, though. We don't hear that a lot. I mean, this is this is a great area of support, right? To help parents and help our children as well. To be hopeful, right? This pandemic will end. Okay, it's not permanent. There will be a vaccine before we know it, right? It's coming. So we really have to inspire our students and parents to be hopeful about the future and be preparing to tackle big problems in our world. This is probably the biggest problem we've had in our lifetime, I would say, right? Apart from a war or something like that. So yeah, thanks very much, Phyllis, for these recommendations. Next, let's go to another sector, entrepreneurship and business. And some students have dropped out of school. They've taken on part-time jobs. They've started small businesses. Will they return to school, right? Or do they need to return to school? And those who are, you know, on the wayside, could they be doing something else? So again, lots of issues and lots of opportunities here. So let's hear from John Tiongo. John is also an entrepreneur, and he's the CEO of Next Level Mavericks Group of companies. So John, we're really looking forward to hearing what you want to say to us here today.
Oh, thank you very much, Tony. I think this is a very interesting discussion here. And I just want to bring perspectives from an entrepreneur's point of view. You know, it's Robin Sharma who said that change is always hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. And for me, coming from entrepreneurship point of view, it was messy for us. It was very hard, but a lot of entrepreneurs have found a way of seeing the gorgeous part of COVID. And that's not easy. We are not there yet, but I think in the mid to long term, we will be there, just as you've encouraged us. And I think the challenge here is also for the education sector to move from the messy part, the hard part, and to drive towards the gorgeous part. But before we get there, we have to open schools. That's the opportunity we have for this coming Monday. So it's 6 months later. Budoy, if you can put up the screen, my presentation on the screen, I'll appreciate. So it's 6 months later. I still remember the day schools were closed. My kids had to come back home. And while we were away from school, a lot has been happening. Some schools, mostly the private ones, have continued teaching through online platforms, but the fees they are getting barely covers the teachers' basic briefing expenses, at least according to the Kenya Private Schools Association. About 95% of the more than 300,000 private schools had to set their staff members on unpaid leave. The schools that have been on leased premises or under bank financing or any other form of financing have had to undergo a lot of financial distress. And so it has been what it has been. It has been very tough for schools, for teachers, for the learners who had to come back to the communities unprepared and had to find a way of joining into the rhythm of life out here. Some of the private schools, especially the ones who are on leased properties, have had to look for alternative sources of income with the entrepreneur spirit in mind. Some have turned their schools, their facilities into farms. I know one in Mwea, I saw that in the news, who turned their school into a chicken farm. And I'm imagining what is going through their mind, because if they had chicken last week in hundreds or thousands, I don't know how Monday will be for that school. The teachers themselves also have had to move on for quite many of them to look for something that can put food on the table. That could be some part-time employment or going into small businesses. At least the teachers in the public school, the state-run schools, may have been a bit luckier, because I would imagine they have been getting some salaries. In a recent BBC news item titled "Coronavirus in Kenya: How It Turned Classrooms into Chicken Coops," the media body cites a former private school teacher in Eastern Kenya who decided to be an entrepreneur and took a loan to start a small business for groceries when the schools closed. And when she was interviewed, she was saying that she hopes her business will do well, and it looks like it was doing well, and didn't plan to go back to school even when the schools reopened. And perhaps this paints a picture of how lives have turned, how changes have come into the lives of people who are players in this ecosystem, teachers, support staff, and even learners, especially in the secondary schools and the tertiary schools and the universities. And therefore, this tells you that a lot has been happening, and it will definitely have an impact on the reopening. Some ripple effects will definitely have to be there, arising from the involvement of the various players in some of these, what they call in Kenya, side hustles, what I prefer to call the side thrives, because this has not been a short break. But what is the effect of this? I think we need to look at those possible effects into our sector. Some of these could include increased dropout rates. Some of the learners may not be able to come back to school because they got engaged into things that are exciting, perhaps prematurely. The parallel side hustles alongside schooling, how will we handle that for teachers, for support staff who are already having a business somewhere, a small business somewhere? I think we'll have to have a clear and better justification for the reopening of schools and the potential increase in the conflict of interest. The other aspect I just needed to highlight is the issue of offering skills for employability programs. I think we'd have to look at how can we then support these people so that we are not just telling them off. We are not just telling them, yes, you now have to come back and you have to do this, but support them both from learners to the staff in terms of supporting them in the new skill areas that they have obtained. The whole issue of conflict of interest, it will be interesting to see how we handle that, because some of the players will come back with interest in other sectors. How then do we help them transition back to our ecosystem without severe issues of conflict of interest? And finally, I would want to finish with two issues I see as sustainability strategies for the sector. One is that we have to expand the definition of the right to education to include connectivity entitlement, because COVID has thrown us like 5 years ahead in terms of the use of technology. How then do we mainstream the use of IT now? Most of our children, right from 6-year-olds now, are able to easily use IT. So how do we bring that into the mainstream? How do we focus now on quality and inclusion of IT for all learners, both urban and rural? And finally is the whole issue of removing the barriers to connectivity, because this crisis has brought a deep understanding of the digital divide and the related equity gaps which require urgent attention. How do we deal with that? The governments have to support, including with the development partners, on how to work together to remove the technological barriers, investing in digital infrastructure and lowering connectivity costs for our schools. Bridging the digital divide will definitely require greater investment. And then finally, the whole aspect of the low-tech and no-tech approaches. We shouldn't forget those ones, especially for those that are in the rural areas, because it may still take time before all that investment is put in there. So we have to find a way of transitioning from the low-tech to the no-tech to the full-tech approaches for learning. So those are some of the considerations I think need to be on the table and discussions that need to happen around this sector. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, John. You're bringing up also some excellent points, particularly the point about preparing students with skills and competencies. That's what employers are looking for all over the world. Medium, large, and small companies. They're not looking